and thank you very much for joining Rishworth Aviation's webinar today on diversity in aviation, navigating barriers, challenges and prejudice. My name is Liz Loveridge and I've been with Rishworth Aviation for over 25 years. I'm Director of Client Services and I have worked across all aspects of the business, assisting client airlines and aviation companies and the aviation experts, pilots, engineers who we place with those airlines. In those 25 years, I've probably not seen a lot of change in the representation of females in the industry, but I'm optimistic that things are changing and so look forward to hearing from the speakers today. For those of you who may not know about Rishworth Aviation, we're the industry-leading global aviation staffing experts, and we've been working in the industry for over 35 years alongside over 100 client airlines and aviation companies, providing them with the staff that they require. We're part of the Empresaria Group, which is a global specialist talent company, and the company represents a range of diverse sectors, including aviation and across a number of countries around the world. No doubt you will have questions throughout the discussions today. And may we ask that if you do have a question, if you could please complete it in the chat box below, and we'll try to answer your questions here today or follow up with you after today's discussions. Today we'll be introducing you to our speakers, then we will talk through a number of questions, and then we will look at questions being asked of the audience today. I'd now like to hand you over to Rishworth Aviation's Managing Director, Rafael Moyano, who has a few words for us today. Rafa.
Thanks a lot, Liz. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. As Liz has mentioned, my name is Rafael Moyano, and I am the MD of Rishworth Aviation. And at the same time, I am the CEO for the Asia Pacific region at Empresaria Group. That is the holding company of Rishworth Aviation, and as Liz has mentioned, have presence in 26 different countries and operate under 16 different brands. So I am really happy and excited to host this webinar because it mixes two topics that are very close to my heart: aviation and diversity. Aviation has attracted me for as long as I remember, probably like I'm sure most of us. I always enjoyed watching planes and even just going through an airport. And professionally, I spent the first 8 years of my career doing a lot of auditing and financial consulting projects for Iberia, that is the Spanish flag carrier. So when Empresaria approached me and offered me the job, that I was included to be an MD of an aviation company, of course, I didn't hesitate for a second and I couldn't say no. When it comes to diversity, probably you know, but recruitment is an industry that is female dominated, but not necessarily when it comes to management roles. Myself, I always have usually at least 50% of the managers that they report to me being a female, and not only in this normal support function that we all think in any company like marketing or HR, but most of them running operations, and nowadays even most of them being the manager of a brand and of a country. In the last years, I have become an equal pay ambassador in Australia, and I also joined several organizations as male champion of change in order to support diversity. So when it comes to diversity in general, and specifically gender diversity in aviation, I am sure we all agree that it's a topic that is growing in importance, and the industry seeks to promote greater representation of women in all areas, including pilots, traffic controllers, engineers, and any other aviation professional. Despite some good progress in recent years that we could all agree, I think still the aviation industry remains male-dominated, with women making up only a small percentage of the aviation professionals. So with this framework, I am absolutely excited to hear from our panelists, to get their thoughts, and to also see how we can give, or how can we keep moving forward to reverse the situation completely. Thank you all for attending this webinar, and back to you, Liz. And you're on mute, Liz.
Thank you, Rafa. I'd now like our key speakers to provide the audience with a quick introduction to themselves. If we could start with you, please, Veronica.
Thank you very much, Liz, and thank you, Rafa. Good morning, everyone, and a special thanks to Rishworth and Empresaria for inviting me to be here today. Very briefly, I was born in Malawi, warm heart of Africa as it's known, to a Malawian father and a British mother. I was educated in Malawi and started my flying career self-sponsored in Malawi by self-training myself through various flying schools in South Africa and Zimbabwe. I pushed to join Air Malawi and I stayed there for 10 years before moving across to Asia, where I joined on a Rishworth contract and where I first met Liz almost 25 years ago. So I joined TransAsia Airways in Taiwan and I worked there for 4 years before moving on to Vietnam, where it was my home for almost 18 years. I recently left Vietnam Airlines and joined DHL in Europe, and I've been in Europe for the last 5 years. In between that, I've opened 2 EASA ATOs. Those are approved training organizations. And I believe in training and educating people and helping bring up the standards and quality in aviation. On top of that, I'm also a member of the ATPG, which is the Airline Training Policy Group. It's an advisory group, and my function there is to be the industry liaison leader, where I support diversity and change in aviation. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica, and over to Fatsima.
Thank you so much, Liz and Rishworth, for this opportunity. I am Captain Khomozo Patsima from Botswana. Botswana is in the heart of Southern Africa. I started my career as a military pilot back in 2009. I grew up next to Cessna Zakama International Airport in a very small village from very humble beginnings. And I used to see aeroplanes flying over my mother's thatched roofed house. And from an early young age, I knew I was born to fly. So after I qualified to become one of the first female military pilots in our country, I started Dare to Dream, an organization that empowers young girls to consider careers and business opportunities in the fields of STEM, as well as aviation and aerospace. I've had the opportunity to study in the Army. I was an aviation safety specialist and also a pilot. I hold a Master of Science degree in strategic management. I was chosen by His Excellency Barack Obama as one of young people changing the narrative of the African continent, and I was taken to the United States of America. I also got an award from Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, as a Commonwealth Point of Light Award winner, one of the young persons who are pointing light for other people, especially in the aviation and aerospace industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Fatsima, and Ashaba.
Sorry, it was muted. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Ashwa Farida, and I come from Uganda, which is the Pearl of Africa. I am one of the few women pilots in my country. I am also the CEO and founder of Bambino Life Foundation, an organization that promotes girl child education and empowerment. We have impacted over 4,000 girls in rural areas of Uganda. I am also a TEDx speaker and an international speaker. And I am also the owner of a private charter company called Ashaba Flights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashaba. And Gregory.
Yeah, good morning all. Morning, Liz and Raphael. Thank you for the invitation, Rishworth. As my main reason for joining this today is my engineering background of 33 years within commercial aviation as a professional engineer. Started out with a structural background and diverse into mechanical and avionics as well. The last 15 years I've been going back and forth from Australia. I lived in Singapore for 5 years, a couple of years in the Philippines as well. So that was around engineering and managing heavy maintenance and line maintenance as well. So I just want to be able to be on this call and express my experience around particularly young people and young women, what I've seen them come into the industry, what they've done for themselves, how they've gone through their career and been very successful. I think there's some good news stories in there, and the way women come into this industry, yes, there's a lot that can be done to improve that, but looking forward to how we go today, and any questions, I'm looking forward to answering them.
Thanks, Greg, and thank you very much, speakers. We've got very interesting lineup here today with very diverse backgrounds and experiences to share. I guess before we start our discussions, a few statistics to be considered. Women comprise approximately 23% of the aviation workforce, but unfortunately, in the pilot world, only 5% of all pilots are female. There's also underrepresentation amongst senior roles, with only 3% of airline CEOs being women. In terms of the representation of these technical roles, pilots, air traffic controllers, maintenance positions, women in aviation workforce represent in the Americas 25%. But in the Middle East, still only 6%. So I guess another point to note is during the COVID pandemic, there was a disproportionate impact on women in aviation, probably because many of those were in customer-facing roles, such as cabin crew and ground staff, which, as we know, were particularly affected by the pandemic. So I guess with those statistics in mind, if we can now move to looking at the questions that we have for our speakers today. Our first question is, do you see barriers preventing women from entering the aviation industry, specifically in the technical roles such as pilots, engineering? And what do we need to do to make it more of an attractive career option for women? Perhaps, Veronica, we could start with your thoughts on this question.
Thank you, Liz. That's a big pizza you've handed me to eat. So let's try to dissect it slice by slice, I think. Barriers are there for all pilots. I want to make that clear. I don't want to just say it's not experienced by all pilots. So we have to be careful to make sure we analyze the gender-specific barriers that we are facing as women. And also we have to appreciate and accept that barriers exist throughout a pilot's career. So we've got barriers from entry into aviation, barriers when women are in the aviation field already, and then further barriers as they try to progress in their aviation career to go into management levels or higher parts of aviation. Also, it's important to recognize that each part of the world has different barriers. And my experience of having been born and raised in Africa and starting my aviation career in Africa, I faced different barriers there to when I moved to Asia and again when I moved to Europe. So if we start at the outset of a pilot's career, the biggest barrier every pilot faces is financial. That's not gender specific. Whether we're talking Asia, Europe, America, every pilot has to fund their training. Women have difficulty in finding funding because they don't have the support structure behind them and they don't have the belief that women can do the job. And this goes back to, I think, culture, and it's worldwide culture. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was writing a letter because I'm dealing with some legal issues here in the UK. And I found myself writing a letter as Dear Sir. And I asked myself, well, where did this come from? Why am I addressing Dear Sir when I don't actually know who's at the end, who's the recipient of my letter? And why are we educating ourselves from elementary grassroots level that is the correct etiquette? So I think one of the biggest barriers worldwide, and like I said, it's a big pizza to digest here. One of the biggest barriers is educating the cultural concept that everything is male dominated. And in my field, in the ATPG, I've started talking to industry about gender neutral language. And I think if we can start with some kind of gender neutral language from school level to educate people that it's not always men that sit in the high positions, in the high echelons of society, and to educate kids that we can address letters as dear madam, and that's equal to dear sir, or find a better way to teach people. But I'm very impressed with some of our aircraft manufacturers who have taken this seriously, and they have gone and changed all their operational manuals into gender neutral language. And perhaps Gregory could also put in here, because he's on the engineering side, which is equally male dominated, and put his viewpoint on gender neutral language, because I think that would be a great starting point to educate people that men and women can do these jobs. And it sounds something that's simple, but it's something that's still culturally ingrained in our brains, that it's a dear sir at the top of the list. Greg, what would you say on that?
Yeah, thanks, Veronica. Look, I totally agree. Look, for women entering into engineering, the background that's already there, obviously male dominated. You're right around how that's managed and how they perceive the language barriers in that. But I mean, a good news story is too what I've seen too in the sanctums of those frontline workers, is that women are very accepted and very welcomed into the industry. Getting through those first steps, like you say, and dealing with those barriers. Once I've seen young ladies enter the business, engineering has its own dialogue itself. So it's like-minded people. So the bias is not so much there once you have those technical attributes within the team. So that's probably a good news story that I've seen out of that.
Great, thanks, Greg. I think it's important to talk about the language, particularly in documentation that's technically related, to make it open and people can recognize that women can do this job. But that's not the only barrier, obviously. Another barrier that I faced when I first became a pilot in Africa was the fact that I was a woman, and genetically women are the ones that are able to have children and raise a family. And my first boss in Air Malawi, he refused to hire me because he was scared that as soon as he employed me as a pilot, I'd run off and get married and have kids. And I was in his office every day, knocking on the door and saying, please, I want to fly. This is my passion. This is what I want to do. And eventually we negotiated between us, and I accepted that the only way he would take me on as a pilot is if I agreed to sign a contract that I wasn't allowed to get married or have children for 5 years. So that's the financial impact that affects women. It's everybody's affected by having the outlay of training expenses, but we also have to understand that companies have a financial impact when they do employ women, because women have to have time off to have kids, have to have time off to raise a family. That's normal. And trying to educate companies that this period doesn't have to be a negative financial impact, because you can use women to put them into training roles, put them into ground roles during this period, so that they are still productive members of your flight operations department. And that's where I see one of the biggest barriers, and that transcends across all culture, across all nations, is allowing or educating companies in them understanding that a woman will have and need this time off, but that doesn't mean she cannot be productive during this period. So it doesn't have to be a negative financial impact on corporations. So I think on the financial aspect, it's educating companies and helping them to move this forward. As women progress in aviation and they become pilots, they start to move up the food chain, they then face different challenges when they want to become captains. They face, again, different challenges when they want to move into management or into training roles. And again, this is to make this an attractive career for women, we've got to give them a path. And it's up to companies to help establish those career paths for women and saying, we support you as women. We support putting you into different roles when you're not able to fly. And we support your job when you do fly. And one of the statistics that was missing, Liz, that you mentioned was actually India. India has the highest percentage of female pilots. I'm not sure about engineers or other technical jobs, but pilots for sure, in aviation. And we have to ask ourselves why and what can we learn from them? And I believe, although I haven't done any research into it, I believe the reason they have such large numbers is because they have a tremendous support infrastructure for women. They have extended families who can take care of their children. They have good nurseries or maids or care to support women going to work and doing the job that we do, because it's not a 9-to-5 job. It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job that requires full support, particularly if you've got a family to manage. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that continent in how to promote women in aviation and make it more attractive. The other benefit that we could educate companies with is pushing women into ground training roles, into flight training roles, simulator training, and educating them that this is a possibility. I didn't know that I could be an instructor, but I was lucky in my career that Airbus believed in me, Airbus educated me, and they made me an instructor. That belief in me opened my eyes because I was able to go out and actually train other pilots. And that's when I realized, like, oh gosh, women aren't such bad pilots after all, but we've always been led to believe that we're the bottom of the pile. So it's giving that belief to women that there are opportunities, there are different aspects to this job if you're not able to continue flying, and you can be equally productive and advance up the career ladder chain. So that's about all I can say at the moment, Liz.
Thank you very much, Veronica and Greg. Some real insights there. And I think some food for thought for where things will change in the areas that you've highlighted for us. Thank you. If we could now move to the second question. Is there still some bias when it comes to hiring women in the aviation industry? Where is it coming from? And how do we overcome it? And I wonder if Fatsima could perhaps give us her thoughts on this.
Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you, Veronica, for such insightful information. I was really inspired as I was listening to you. Yes, I believe that there are some bias when hiring women in terms of aviation, as Veronica has rightfully mentioned. When I told my mother that I wanted to be a pilot, she says that during her time, girls could never even dream of becoming a pilot. I should go to the university and become a teacher. And indeed, I went to University of Botswana and studied mathematics and physics and become a teacher. She says that girls could never even dream of becoming pilots during her time. So that on its own, it shows us these cultural barriers that are saying that women cannot be some things and they cannot be something. And then when I left the military, after I was a teacher, then the military says they wanted the first females to fly. When I told them that now I'm going to be a soldier and a pilot, it was like two things that are so extreme that no woman has ever done. So my mother cried, my relatives, everybody was saying, no, you cannot go and become a pilot, you cannot go and become a soldier. But I left home and told them that this is what I want. This is what resonates in my heart. So I believe that there are such cultural practices that we are still looking at and saying girls should be something else and girls should not be something else. And then when I get now to the military, when we started flying, there were people that girls are not flying well, just like Veronica was saying, we are destroying military aircraft. Some of the men did not even want to fly with us. When you are a female and then they come and find out that you're a female, they wouldn't want to fly with us. But one of the things that I learned during my basic military training that really restored the hope and the confidence in me is that every time when someone did not want to fly, I just closed the aircraft and say, if you don't get in, I'm going. So they would jump in very fast. So with that, things started changing. We saw a lot of our pilots and a lot of our bosses really appreciating us and opening doors for us. Even though there are biases in the aviation industry, well, especially the military, for example, because it's very male dominated, there is a level of hope that things are getting better. I think how we can overcome it is the work that we are doing, for example, at Dare to Dream, inspiring more young girls and showing them that it is possible for them to be anything in the world, even flying, even aviation doctors, even air traffic controllers, as Rafael was mentioning. So we have to have so many inspirational girls to show them that this is possible. We have to have exposure. We have an initiative called the Fly for STEAM Southern Africa Initiative in partnership with our national airline, Air Botswana. We fly young people across the country. I think to date, we have flown around 1,000 young people from rural areas, from underprivileged communities, and also from towns, showing them that this thing is very much possible. We want to take this initiative across the Southern African continent and also reach out to my friend in Uganda, Ashaba, and see how we can empower more young people in the African continent and show them the possibilities in the aviation and aerospace. And also, most importantly, the other thing that through this program, we got a
I'm sorry, we seem to have lost the sound there from Fatsima. I'm wondering maybe, Greg, you could give your views on the bias that there may be when it comes to hiring women.
Oh, look, the hiring side, what I've seen, the bias is not so much there, it's more so externally. And it can be as simple as the way a woman's dressed, like for engineers themselves. Just having the uniform on. I had a young female that was a licensed engineer, and they usually will wear the high vis stuff, and embarrassingly enough for her, which I really helped us through it, was that pilots and ground staff didn't recognize her as a licensed engineer boarding the aircraft and just treated her as she was a cleaner or something. So we got through that, and her uniform was the white shirt with the epaulets. I put a lot of pride into her as well, and recognition. So those little simple things that create bias can be overcome. People just talk to people and make sure you get out there and have people understand women can be the front line in aviation, and especially around being an engineer and conducting themselves around the aircraft and with flight crew and that as well. I just saw what Veronica said too, just talking about companies and attracting women and responsibility companies as well. I think the governments have a lot of responsibility as well to provide the likes of maternity leave, and that I know in Australia it's well advanced now, and governments really support women in all industries and make sure they're supportive when they want to have families and advance their careers and be able to come back into the workplace as well. So look, there are some good stories there as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg. Fatsima, are you with us again? No. Veronica, perhaps anything else that you'd like to add?
Thank you so much. Say again.
Oh, are you there,
yes,
Fatsima?
I'm back.
Okay, thank you. If you would like to continue talking with us, that would be great.
Yes, like I was saying, how we can overcome it is to have those programs that are geared towards getting more young girls interested into these careers. We also last year got recognized by the International Air Transport Association, IATA, and I was nominated for the High Flyer Award for the work that you are doing in trying to get more young people interested in aviation and aerospace industry. So those are some of the programs that we can start and also showcase to young people, as well as career expos, so that they can see that there are amazing things that are happening in the industry over and above just piloting, because a lot of young people, you realize that they think that it's just about piloting, but there's so much in this industry that can take not only our country nor our continent forward, but also the world forward. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you, Fatima. And back to you, Veronica. Is there anything you'd like to add on that topic?
Thank you, Liz. There's 2 points that Greg touched on that I'd like to comment on. The first is presentation and dress, and women are always judged more judiciously than men. I was actually watching a program on Angela Merkel last night, a fantastic leader, a world leader, and the people were just commenting on her dress code, and they were totally disregarding what she was doing, be it good or bad, but it was just how she dressed. And that's how women are judged in the aviation field as well. If we wear makeup, if we have nails or we don't have nails, if we want to be a woman or don't want to be a woman, we're judged. We're never judged on our competence. And I think we need to highlight that we're looking at competence. And that's something that's missing in the women's entry into aviation. The second thing I'd like to touch on that Greg said is that governments have to take responsibility. Perhaps have to is a bit of a strong word, but I think they can lead the way. And the FAA are showing a great example. They founded the WIAAB, Women in Aviation Advisory Board, in 2020, I think. I'm not sure of the year exactly, but their task is to find out why such a big part of the workforce, which is women, are not being attracted into these technical jobs, and to find out the reasons and root causes for it and what they can do to help improve the situation. And I think other governments can capitalize on that and get experience from the WIAAB and set up similar task forces, because like I said, the issues are not across the world. They differ in different parts of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, speakers. Some very interesting comments there, and hopefully some areas where we will see improvement soon. Now, looking at our third question for our speakers, what program or initiatives should be in place to support, attract, retain women to technical roles? So again, looking at the pilot and engineering side. Do you have any advice for women who are looking to succeed in this industry? And I wonder if we could start with Ashba, your thoughts on this.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Fatima. I was relating to most of what she was saying. And actually, to answer the first question, it's one of the things that she has been talking about, the things that, creating these different programs in aviation. I personally, from where I come from, the country where I come from, there is not enough awareness. I have a diploma in flight operations and management, and that is what I'd gone to do at the aviation school when I realized that there are actually women flying. I didn't know that, women could fly aircrafts because there was no awareness around it. And when I saw a lady fly, I was like, I can do this. She looks like me, she is like me. If she can do it, then I can definitely do it. And then it flipped a switch in me. And then I started on that journey of wanting to become a pilot. But if I had not had that opportunity to see her land that plane, I would never have known that that opportunity is available for someone like me. So there is that thing of presentation and creating awareness and giving people relatable role models who they can look up to, people who look like them. We need something like that. And I'm glad to hear that, there are women who are already doing that. For example, Fatima is already doing that. In my country, there is something that I'm doing where I'm offering young girls and parents opportunities to fly their children. And it has been such an amazing journey because This girl comes, and then when she sits in the aircraft, you ask her what she wants to be on ground, and she wants to be something else. And then when you do that one circuit and come back and land, you're like, okay, what do you want to be? She's like, I want to be a pilot. And then I asked her why. She's like, well, if you can't do it, why can't I do it? You know, because she looked at me and she said, if you can't fly, then I can definitely fly. So there is that importance of representation, not just talking about it, also the action that has to follow the words that, you know, we are putting out there. So that is one of the things that I realized has been working. I've seen it work on ground, and I know it has, you know, it's going to help more young kids out there, because we are looking at children right now. They are the future. And if we are looking at the future of aviation, we have to look at the children. Some of us, the old people, we have already gone. We have our old ways of thinking. The old generation is set in their ways, which is not a bad thing, but that is what they know. And like Fatima said, her mom, you know, was crying when she said she wanted to be a pilot. So in Africa, it's very common that women have not seen young girls fly, or, you know, women flying. My mom, I've never even told anything about flying. She will not sit through anything. The moment I start to say, you know, I was flying, she's like, oh, no. How'd you do that? Don't tell me, I don't want to know. What if you die? You know, stuff like that. So the focus is on the young generation, the young girls right now. How can we plant this seed in them that is going to germinate and become a beautiful tree? We have to put all these values, and we have to show them that, you know what, you can do it, you know, you can do it, and do not use your gender, like Veronica was saying. You know, there is that thing whereby, because we talk about women pilots, we think it's enough that I should walk to a company and apply and say, well, because I'm a woman, you know, you need gender equality. No, let your actions speak for you. Are you putting in the work? And one of the things that I've always said, when people ask me, you know, do you face gender bias and all of that? Yes, it is there. But at the end of the day, I let my work speak for me. You know, you're either a good pilot or you're not. You know, whether you are a man or you're, you know, a woman, if a company wants you to do something and you're unable to do it, there is that place where they're going to look beyond your gender and say, can you do this thing? You know, so we have to look beyond that, and we have to teach the girls that don't use your gender to front and, you know, manipulate and think that you're entitled to things mainly because you're a woman. Put in the actual work, and, you know, let the circumstances align with you and work with you. And lastly, what is my advice to the women that are going into this particular field? I will go back to that thing that is going to sound like cliche right now, but I'm going to say, please put in the work. You're not entitled to positions because you are a woman. It's not enough. Put in the actual work. Show that you really want to do this thing that you're applying to do, you know, put in the actual work, and don't be afraid to be the first at certain things, because if we're always going to follow, you know, other people's footsteps, we may miss out on creating new paths. And they're very, very important, because it's not always the old path that will lead you somewhere. You can create and fashion your own path in that particular way. And as I summarize, I'll give you a small example. From my end, most of the domestic companies here are owned by men. Actually, there is no company here that is owned by any woman. And the women are already few in aviation, the pilots are already few. And when I finished school, one of the things that was expected of me is to apply to the airline, because so many women are already in the airline. But I was like, there is already that, you know, these women are already setting examples, which is amazing, but I need something else. I need to show people out there that you can actually create something. That people who are into, you know, creating, it's not bad, but we need all these options available to us. So I started up something small, and I work with these different aircraft owners. You know, they'll give me their aircraft and say, you know, I have this aircraft and I need money from this aircraft. And then I will get clients and be like, you know, if you have whatever particular aircraft, I get you the clients and I make you that money. And I'm the first in this particular field. And it's very fresh for me. And I've had people say, you know, you're going to fail. You know, in Africa, people don't pay for flights to just have fun and what. I was like, it's okay. I'm okay with taking one step at a time. And that's also another important thing, taking one step at a time. You don't have to fly before you walk. Be patient with yourself. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to compare yourself, because you don't know what people have gone through to get where they are. It will be very weird of me to see Veronica and say, you know, Veronica's flown these aircrafts and all of that. But when I hear her story, And I hear some of the sacrifices, you know, she has had to go through like her first job, being forced to sign that contract, you know, don't have kids, don't get married. And then you're like, oh, you know, I want to be like this. And, you know, you're envying this person and all that, but you don't know the sacrifices they've gone through to get where they are. So we should all appreciate each other's journeys and be very patient with ourselves. And that is the advice I can give to women out there. And it can be anything that you set your mind to, you know, don't be too hard on yourself. Take your step at a time. Do things that align with you and bring you peace. Above all and above everything, peace of mind is the greatest wealth we can give to ourselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Some very interesting insights there, Shaba. I wonder, Greg, if we could just hear from you on this topic, either the advice for succeeding in the industry or program or initiative to.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Look, there's plenty of programs out there. The biggest problem I've seen is that we have women in the front of house, obviously around aviation, airports. You know, the front of house is a role that, you know, that we see as women in those roles, but unfortunately we don't celebrate enough success behind the scenes in engineering. Women out on the front line, out on the tarmac, especially engineering roles within the camo as well, technical roles. Those women, we need to celebrate them, or we need to make them role models. We need to have them going to schools and different events like this, you know, where we really need to, women can do a great job in all these areas and quite capable, as equally or if not more than the males. So how we get that message, it's about education. Fatima talked about education before. So we need to get to the root causes there and getting in early into schools, having those conversations with young women, showing them the career paths as well. The career paths can just getting your foot in the door in aviation. There's so many roles, so many aspects of the business that you can get yourself into and opportunities, but it's just getting that initial interaction to open the doors for young ladies to come and join and get really involved in the business. And we've really got to, it sounds rhetorical, but this celebrating success is a big thing, to lead by example for the next generation also, that it can be done and it will be done.
Thank you, Greg. And I think our other key speakers, their background probably represents what you've just said. So the more trailblazers we can have and role models, that would be great. I guess with International Women's Day coming upon us tomorrow, this year's campaign is focused on embrace equity, allocating the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. So I just wonder if each of the speakers could please just give one piece of advice that may help promote or support this Embrace Equity campaign. Veronica?
Thanks, Liz. And I want to thank Ashaba for a great presentation there. And I don't want to steal her words, but I think my advice would be, is we are equal and work hard. There is no free lunch out there.
Thank you. Fatima?
Thank you so much, Liz. I was very inspired and touched by Ashaba's words. Thank you, Ashaba. You are amazing. It's great to have a sister in Africa doing amazing things like you. And I hope, like I said, we partner and work towards impacting young girls in aviation in both Uganda and Botswana. Just to go back to the previous question, what I'd love to say is that the industry must really play a role in getting more young people interested in the aviation and aerospace initiatives. Just to give you an example, we've been working with Airbus Foundation since 2018. Airbus Foundation has a Little Engineer program, which impacts young people to consider careers in STEM, as well as learn about the programming, learn about assembling of aircraft using their model aircraft A380. So to date, we have impacted close to 6,000 young people in rural areas and also in urban areas. So this is what the industry can come on board and make sure that they deploy resources so that young people can be part of this. So to talk to embracing equity today, I can say to the women who are listening and to the young girls out there, I could say that be fearless in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire. It is not going to be easy. A lot of doors are going to be closed on your face, but go out there and make sure that you dare to dream and achieve whatever you want and whatever you feel. Thank you so much, Liz.
Thank you very much. And now if we look at some questions that have come in from the audience, and I wonder if we can put these to the speakers, please. How can we work to address women leaving the industry mid-career due to a lack of support or opportunities? Any of the speakers would like to respond on that?
Thanks, Liz, if I may.
Certainly.
I think a lot of pilots reach points in their career where they either have medical issues, family issues, or other issues which doesn't allow them to continue their career to the extent that they had. And particularly for women. And I think, as you mentioned in the slide, post-corona, we saw a huge attrition of women in aviation. I think opening different fields, particularly in the training environment where we need so many trainers to educate the younger generations coming through, I think those need to be more open and accessible to female pilots as well as male pilots who choose a different path in life. Unfortunately, and I speak from the airline point of view because that's where I am, most airlines, when you reach that phase where you say, look, I want to step back a bit, I want to give back in a different way, they don't make that accessible. They say, oh, well, if you want to take part-time or you want to stop, you can't go into training, you can't go into management, and they make all these restrictions. Whereas I think the mindset needs to change a little to say, we're offering you to move into different areas of aviation, and we're happy that you take 50% flying. But the mindset right now is that it costs so much to get a pilot into a flight deck operationally that the companies are not financially minded to take that person out of the flight deck. So I think it's a cultural mindset to airlines in enabling them to find different venues to channel their talent.
Thank you. And another question that we have here is, what resources are available to women who've experienced discrimination in the industry, and how can we ensure that these resources are accessible and effective? Now, this may vary from region to region, country to country, but any comment on what resources may be available for women who have experienced discrimination in the industry? Greg, I'm not sure if you've had any experience in this area or aware.
Yeah,
of the
well, look,
resources.
I think the best thing is for anyone is to talk about it, right? Having those conversations, challenging the norm as well, facing those discriminations, working amongst your peers. There's always support there. I encourage women to always reach out, male or female, and be recognised and challenge those discriminating factors every day, because there's always someone there that will listen and support you, and most people just need that confidence and support to push them through to get over those challenges.
Thank you, Greg. Another question. One way to increase equity would be to make parental leave available to both parents and to normalise it. as in Scandinavia, for example, then having families stops being a woman problem when fathers and non-birth parents are taking extended leave to care for their families. How do you think the industry would react to that? Could it be led by industry where government isn't leading the way? It's a lot in that question, but
If I may, Liz,
yes.
I think that's a fantastic question. And I think it's important that we keep it equal, because one of the challenges women are facing right now is angst from men. Oh, women are getting everything. Women are getting in the doors. Why must we employ women? What about, you know, the white male is at the bottom of the hiring list. And we're not there to make that kind of challenge. We're there for equal opportunities. So I think this is an excellent question, because if we could equalize it across the board, because we do also have men that are either single fathers or also have same issues as women have. So this is not an entirely gender-based problem. And I think it's fantastic if industry could lead the way. But we have to appreciate that this level of equality doesn't exist worldwide. In Europe, what I've seen is it's very equal. The parental leave is there for women. Parental leave in other parts of the world is non-existent in aviation. Female pilots just do not get it. End of story. So you then have to come offline, you have to stop flying, you then are responsible for your own requalification costs if you want to come back into flying. And it's very, very challenging. So if we could equalize it across the board and get industry to lead this, it might force government to make legal change. And whoever put that question, thank you. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and it's something that industry needs to push forward.
Ashwa or Fatsima, anything you'd like to add on that question?
Sorry,
Not
I
at the
didn't.
moment.
Sorry, go ahead, Fatima.
No, not at the moment. Go ahead, Ashaba.
No, I was saying I didn't have much to really say about it because I have not experienced it myself yet. So I like talking about something that I've had experience with. I know for us, for example, here in Uganda, the airline just started recently. It's like 2 years young or 3 years young. So I don't really know what's happening down there. I know I have a few friends who have given birth. I've seen they've gotten leave, which is good, because one friend of mine was having complications with her back issues and the airline is catering for that while giving her a leave. So I will have to sit with the ladies and maybe ask them and then come back with actual, reports. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Asheba.
Liz, I think on that one there is some very good examples, as Veronica mentioned before. That look, there are certain parts of the world that lead the way in this, and we need to recognise that the acceptance is there of to make it equal. But we need to push those examples back into business, back into governments, and let it grow, because certainly come out of the dark ages, and this has certainly been acknowledged in parts of the world, and it's about pointing those acknowledgements out to drive and spread the messaging throughout the rest of the world of what's acceptable and what's not, to ensure equity.
Thank you very much for that, Greg. And that, I guess, brings us to near the end of our webinar. So there's been some very interesting thoughts and experiences shared with us today. But as our time draws to a close, I'd like to just thank our key speakers for their time today, and to the audience for listening to our discussions and for your questions and participation. And we look forward to having you join our webinars in the future, and hope that what you may have heard today has given you some food for thought, and certainly will result in some very positive changes as times move on for the representation and diversity in the aviation industry for women. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you all.
Thank you.